Welcome to Talk Dirt to Me, where two farmers shatter myths and take on the top issues facing America's farmers. Here's your hosts, Logan and Bobby Lee.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's peak. It's actually not raining today, man. I came straight in from the
Man, it
field.
is a beautiful day.
It
A
is.
little hot, honestly. I gotten pretty good and sweaty a couple times today already.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, guys, we got an awesome episode for y'all today. We got a really cool guest, and before we get into that, we got to take care of the house cleaning. And first, we need y'all to leave us rating and reviews. Y'all are crushing it, man. We're up to two. We've gained 2 or 3 5-stars since last week on
deal.
Apple, and Apple's kind of our slow folks. So nearing that 300 mark rating. So we want to see us. Let's get to 300 there. Spotify, every time I check it, we're up to another one, almost to 400 over there. So, guys, let's keep pushing those ratings and reviews. They're doing great. We appreciate all the comments. We got some great comments on Spotify and on YouTube. And, just leave us those ratings and reviews. And what else I need to do?
Check out agzaga.com. I guess there's still time to enter the giveaway.
Yeah, May 12th.
Yeah, go on Instagram. You'll see the post on the Talk Dirt Podcast Instagram page. Like it. Make a comment, tag a person in the comments.
Yes.
That's the word looking for. Be sure you're following agzaga.com and the podcast, which you should be already.
Yep.
Enter to win, roll the bail net wrap. Or if you don't win, just do some shopping, buy you some bail net wrap. Any of the other good things they got. Use that discount code, Talk Dirt, all caps, all one word. You get 10% off everything.
Yep. There you go. Do it, guys. All right, guys, we got a really cool one for you today. We're joined by Patrick Montgomery of KC Cattle Company. What's going on, man?
Guys, I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, man, you got a cool story. You've done 2 of my favorite things. I was never in the military, but always thought that was super cool. And now you're a rancher, cattleman, and so you're in the ag sector. So that's 2 spots we both think is pretty badass.
Absolutely.
Well, I tend to agree with you. My son's school principal, I think she might have been hitting on me, and I'm hoping nobody in the Weston area is listening on this, because you know how small towns are. But it's like, she's like, oh man, you were a ranger and now you're a rancher. Those must earn you some real cool dad points. And I'm like, man, it ain't bad, and I'll take all those I can get. So
did she ask you to bust out the ranger panties or anything?
I did just spend an entire content day yesterday in ranger panties, which, like, the things I do to sling beef, and I'm not above it to put food on my table. So
there you go.
Yep, you got it. You got to be creative today, man.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. So, give us a little rundown for people that don't know. Tell us a little bit of who you are in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I got out of the military in 2014. I'm from the Kansas City area, small town. Still considered Parkville, but I grew up in a rural area, but not an ag background. Right, the biggest exposure I had to it was bucking hay during the summer for some beer money, and that was about it. Joined the military in 2010. Did 4.5 years. It was a busy time for the military, and I got pretty sick of the politics, so I hung it up and went back to school to become a large animal vet at Mizzou. Did my animal science program, and the last couple semesters I started getting some pretty cool, I saw the small animal side, and I'm like, this is where the money's at. And I spent about a year working as a vet assistant at a small clinic there in Columbia. And I'm like, man, this is miserable. You just clean teeth and do spays and neuters all day, and it just wasn't for me.
I know, man.
Yeah. And I love the large animal side, but I'm like, man, at that point I wasn't thinking with the entrepreneurial mindset as much. So I was like, I don't want to spend another 4 years in school doing something that may or may not pay for the tuition that I spend. So I did my MBA instead, and at the same time I was doing my MBA, I started KC Cattle Company, which the whole thing there was, my wife is what do they call that? She's like old school. She's like one of the OG crunchy,
like a trad wife.
Oh yeah, she's like, she was talking about organic and all the crazy stuff, and I'm like, I lived on MREs for 2 years, which there's about 1,000 ingredients per per single serving container in there. And, I'm still in okay shape. So I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm down for this. But, on the other side, I'm at the ag school at Mizzou where, I'm learning about all the different stuffs, and you care a lot more when you go back and you're a little older because you're not distracted by beer and women as much. So,
yep.
I'm sitting there learning about all this, and I'm like, there's such a disconnect between the people that produce the food in this country and the people that consume it. And that was the whole premise. So it was farm to table before that was kind of cool. And we chose Wagyu beef just because I really wanted people to be able to tell the difference between, I knew I was going to have to charge a premium compared to what you buy at the grocery store. So if I'm going to do that, you damn well better be able to tell the difference in the steak you buy from us.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Well, the Wagyu thing, I've actually only ever had Wagyu one time. Two times now. First, I was in Vegas, and I just had a Wagyu smash burger, which was pretty dang good. And then the second was actually just here in January. Me and my wife, for our anniversary, went to Memphis, and they had this porch and parlor. You ever been there?
Yeah.
They got like all this Wagyu. And they had like some crazy Wagyu. It was like the Japanese A5 or whatever, and it was insanely expensive. I got like
charge you by the ounce.
It was by the ounce, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one I ended up getting, but it was really good. I got a Wagyu ribeye, and man, the thing was delicious. So Wagyu is cool. We got a lot of ag listeners, but we also have a lot of people that aren't in ag. Give a rundown. What the crap is Wagyu?
Well, it's funny because, and I don't know if this changed during like all the PC stuff that happened between like 2020 and 2024, but I swear the association used to say that it means black cow in Japanese, but somehow either I'm dumb and just misread it, but now it means Japanese cow.
Okay.
I'm like you. I always thought that, because then there's the
Akiushi, which was supposed to be red cow.
Red cow, right? I thought that's the only difference. Just one's red, one's black. But yeah, okay.
Now you Google it and it says it means black cow. So I don't know or it says it means Japanese cow, and I'm like, I don't know what happened there, but it is
politically correct enough. Come on, man.
I guess. So it is a breed of cattle, and it's got kind of a cool story behind it. Essentially, the animals were brought to Japan right as they opened up their doors to trade to Europe and America after, kind of the samurai dynasty died and they started to industrialize, and they used them as draft animals. And what they figured out was, these animals aren't cut out for 14-hour days plowing paddy fields. They just keel over dead. And there was one lineage that had been brought over there that could do that. And so they bred on that for a couple hundred years. And what the side factor or side benefit was, they're breeding on 2 mutations that created a whole new line of genetics that, essentially allowed for all that intramuscular fat and for that fat composition to be different. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. They're interesting looking, like because in our area,
you can say it, man. They're ugly.
They're ugly cows.
Yep.
Yeah, they are. But they taste great.
They're unique.
Yeah,
they're different.
Yeah. They are. Like, because everybody in our area, Herefords are big within Angus, and like black Angus is like what people like to have.
You drive up and down the road, you're gonna see black cattle 90% of the time.
Yep, and they're a good looking cow. When I first was kind of, because I've still considered putting Wagyu out here at my place. I got like a 20-acre field right here by my house, and I was thinking about fencing it in for them, and like Wagyu, because I'm not going to run a bunch of cattle. So I was like, if I run a few, I want to feed them out. I want that higher end kind. So I looked into them. I still haven't wrote it off, but I was like, man, I've never seen one in person, and they're unique looking.
It's funny because our ranch manager, he's been a cowpoke through and through since he's a kid, from Iowa, and he worked for a show cattle operation before he came down for this job. And he came down here and he's like, you could just tell he started hating the breed until he's tried the steak, and he's like, all right, I guess I'll work a little harder at this. But we're out there, and we still have some show cows that run around on the property, and he's walking me through all the confirmation stuff you're looking for, and I'm like, huh. So you're basically looking for everything that a Wagyu cow's not. And he's like, exactly.
Well, and this brings up something I never even thought about. Are there any people that are showing Wagyus? Like
I don't think so. You
Like,
take a Wagyu to a sale barn and it hurts your heart a little bit.
oh yeah, yeah, but I
Yeah,
didn't know. I was like, maybe there's a niche there. As it got more and more popular, that yeah,
That somebody
maybe
was, yeah.
there'd be a class just for
I think we
Wagyus.
should
Yeah,
start that trend.
You
yeah, there
should.
we
You
go.
should. Like the Chinese crested dog.
Yeah, I mean,
See, they got that. They need a Wagyu show
yeah,
class.
you've got some young kids.
They can show some
They're kind of
Wagyus.
getting stock show age.
Yeah, yeah,
Get
yeah,
get some, get them halter broke. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm
We
not
might give
opposed
them
to
a
anything.
complex.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always figured because I knew the Wagyu had a ton of fat, like it's got that good marbling, and I
Mhm.
always envisioned the cow as being a really big fat cow, but you don't see that. Like that's not how they look when I see them.
It's just a small frame cow with a bunch of back fat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what? How did you get started? Like, cause you told us you did not have the background in it. So like, what was your? Because man, we have people all the time. How can I get started in row crop? How can I get started in cattle?
You know,
And it's hard. It's hard to guide them.
yeah, I think if I knew what I knew today, I probably would have been like, yeah, I would have picked a different business to jump into. But I am glad that I did do it because the whole premise was I told my wife, I'm like, hey, you got to be the sugar mama while I go back and do my undergrad and go to vet school, and then she's always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I when I decided I wasn't going to vet school, I was like, all right, I got to go fulfill my end of the promise. And I went to a job interview in Kansas City, and it was based on my previous profession, so it was a security consulting position, and a lot of it was OCONUS work, but a good job, W-2. A lot of it was tax free, working
Yeah.
overseas for 6 months of the year, and I just remember like my last interview was a panel interview with like the multiple managers that I would be under, and their last question for me was like, what questions do you have for us? And the only question I had was like, I don't understand the job. Like, you guys are acting like this is like a top secret position. Like, I had those clearances. So like, sorry, jumped off camera there. I had those clearances. So can you just give me a little more insight onto like, what am I doing? And they kind of looked at each other, and I think I took them by surprise with that question, because their reply was, convincing corporate worth the money they pay us. And I just, at this point, I'm missing the guys from the military, right? Because like,
Yeah.
you have this really cool purpose, and you're surrounded by folks that just overall have a good morality and believe in what America is and can be. And then I'm like in the college classroom, and for 3 years at Mizzou, and
Totally
I'm like,
opposite.
oof. Yeah. And so I got done with that interview, and I was just like, man, I'm pretty torn. So I called my wife, and I was like, I'm either starting a business or I'm going back in the military. And so needless to say, she didn't push back too hard on starting a business until I was like, yeah, I want to start a cattle ranch in Weston, Missouri. And she's like, oh, I think you might be losing it.
Yeah.
But, I got the money from, I had this conversation with veterans a lot that are trying to jump into the space. And I'm like, if you're retiring and you're on the officer side and you're like a full bird colonel, good chance you have a little bit of collateral there that you can put up for a loan to start out. But if you're a newer enlisted guy like I was, and you're getting out after 5 years, maybe you have 50,000, maybe 80,000 in life savings, but that ain't enough to secure a decent size loan. So for me, I got proof of concept from it was a friends and family loan, basically a guy I knew from when I was in that did really well in the financial services, and offered me a sweetheart deal. It was just an interest rate, and I used that money to get proof of concept that like, hey, people are interested in this breed, and they're willing to order it online, which people are like, yeah, of course, in 2025. But at that point, we were one of 4 that were shipping Wagyu online.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What year was that?
2016 is when I started the company. Bought my first heifer at an auction down in Springfield, and after my wife was like, do not buy anything. We live in a 1/4 acre lot in Columbia, Missouri. And I'm like, I won't. But I was like, this is my first auction I ever went to. And I'm like, this is so cool. And I got all caught up in it.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, I want
Oh, yeah.
that one. I'm like, oh shit, now I got to figure out where I'm going to put this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Auctions are fun.
Oh man, yeah, I love going to auction.
Yeah.
yeah.
I watch a bunch online, and I'm registered to bid, and then I don't end up buying anything, but I still get excited.
Yeah. Yeah. That's dude. Yeah. Auctions still pump me up. Now, I mean, I don't get to. Oftentimes the deals aren't what they used to be. Like used to, you could get a good deal at auction, now, especially on the row crop side, man, all these guys, if they get any money, dude, hell, they'll pay like new price for used stuff just to keep the other guy from buying it. Like you can
Yeah.
get into these bidding wars, and but it is high octane, kind of fun, a fun thing, and yeah, dude. So that's interesting on the cattle. Now, how did you handle the shipping starting? Because I shipped some deer meat to somebody in Texas like 2 years ago, and it cost me, and it was not a lot of it, but I had to put like dry ice in there and ship it frozen. Dude, the shipping was insane. So, like, how did you handle that?
I mean, it's a huge problem for trying to get into the D2C space. And the new deal we're starting out, which is Valor Provisions, that's the whole premise of it is, and we'll probably get into that, so I won't jump too far ahead. But shipping your product to the consumer, and then on top of that, dealing with all the issues that go with having 5,000, 10,000 customers. When UPS doesn't deliver on time, or the box falls apart in transit, it falls off the back of the UPS truck or gets stolen in New York City. Like those are all emails and phone calls that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And luckily I was stupid naive because we were slinging steaks out of the back of, mostly steaks out of the back of my pickup truck. And then I was picking up restaurants in the Kansas City area. And pretty quickly I'm like, man, this ain't going to work, because restaurants a tough business in itself. And when they're stretching you 90 or 120 days on payment, you can get yourself in trouble pretty quick. So it was really kind of 2018. I was like, man, we're just going to focus on this D2C model. And I pulled out all the restaurants we were serving, and I put the website up in the spring of 2018. And we didn't really become a real company until 2019, and in between that period was a ton of learning. And we had this bathroom. I built our office space inside our shop the first year I was out there, and we had this bathroom that just had an individual heater, and if you have that thing cranked up all the way, it'll get up to like 95 degrees in that bathroom. So that was our testing facility for packaging. I'd crank that thing up to 95 and just have so it wasn't a whole lot of fun to use the restroom when
I can imagine. Yeah.
So I know you said you bought that first heifer. Did you just start buying cows, just finding and just slowly built the herd up?
I did for the first couple years. And I had a ranger buddy of mine. He actually got out the same time I was getting in. We met when we were palm bearers at a funeral. And he had a much bigger operation down in Austin at this point. And, he really leaned into the genetic side of the Wagyu. And I, out of necessity, after, the hot dog thing happened in 2019, we much more so became a beef company. And for cash flow purposes, we worked out, like the cattle on our property, I still have a small herd of genetics, but a lot of it, my father-in-law owns, and we buy them from him as fats, because trying to vertically integrate this entire thing, that was my original plan. I'm like, holy crap, I need $100 million to do that. So
yeah. Oh yeah. The numbers you have to have. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just kind of hit on it, and you had mentioned this when we were talking beforehand, and I'd looked this up, this hot dog thing. So, I mean, man, I think everybody loves hot dogs. But y'all had literally voted the best hot dog in the world. How did that come to? I got a lot of questions. How'd you get into hot dogs, and this? How do you come up with a recipe? Because man, I've always heard I didn't want to know what goes in a hot dog.
Yeah, we actually we fight that quite a bit. Actually, I'm like, I promise, I do not put any lips or the other
holes in there
into the freaking hot dog. I promise you, I don't do it. But that came about. When we launched the website, the only marketing dollars I spent was I'd interviewed this local PR firm here in Kansas City, and they're the perfect mix, because they're all females, and they're the perfect mix of nice but incredibly you don't not respond to one of these girls' emails, and they just do a really good job of getting placements. And so between 2018 and 2019, when this hot dog thing happened, they got us some really favorable press, like Today Show, Forbes, New York Times. But we get these sales bumps and then fall right back off. And it was always steaks. I was always slinging the steaks, and the ground beef was killing us. People are always like, why are you making a Wagyu beef hot dog? And I'm like, why aren't you cutting ribeyes? I'm like, you realize like 70% of that animal is trim, right?
Yep.
The stuff you turn into ground beef. Only about 2% are those ribeyes.
Yep.
If I could create an animal that was all ribeyes, I'd be having this conversation on a beach somewhere that's really warm. But I created the hot dogs because all of our cash was tied up in the freezer in the form of ground beef. And it was hands down the worst seller when we launched them, which would have been spring of 2019. And then, the PR firm sending these packs of hot dogs all over the country to publications. But, normally the way that works is some journalist gets some free product and never writes about you. It's kind of the standard MO, but we'd send a pack to Food and Wine Digital out on the East Coast and never heard anything back, which, like I said, it's kind of standard.
Yeah.
And then I was over at a neighbor's property who raises some hogs, and I was helping them put in some fence. And at this point I get all the notifications on my phone when we're selling, and, we're shipping maybe 20 orders a week at this point. And it's a 5-minute drive from his house to mine. And in that 5 minutes in my truck, I pretty quickly established like, hey, something's going on, because I've had like 10 orders in the last 30 seconds. But at this point, we've had the Today Show, we've had some stuff like that. Sometimes you don't know when it's going to hit. So I'm thinking that. So I called the PR firm. I'm like, did something hit? And they're like, I don't think so. I'm like, well, something's happening. In that 5-minute drive, like we had just over 1,000 orders come in.
Oh, dang. Wow.
And I open up my computer and like hit the refresh button, and there's like 500,000 people on the website. It keeps crashing. And I'm like, what is going on? And we allowed back orders at that point. So yeah, we went from being a steak company to becoming a hot dog company overnight. But
yeah. Dang, man. Did you have to like hire in reinforcements to get that shipped out and make it? I mean, how did you meet that demand?
Man, it was pretty stressful. Literally, I'm doing my MBA too at this point, and the case study I'm reading about is the Oprah effect, which is, when Oprah talks about like a small mom and pop, widget she bought, and then next thing you know, they get overwhelmed and they shut down because of growth problems. So that's like running through the back of my head, and I tell my wife, like, I'm turning off the website, and she's like, don't you dare touch that button. And I think I went against all the things I'd learned as far as business advice, where it's like, don't tell the consumer what's actually going on, fake the funk, that whole kind of thing. And I just typed up an email that night and sent it out to everybody that ordered and everybody that was on the wait list. Like, hey, I'm going to get you these hot dogs. It'll take 8 to 12 weeks. And if you want a refund, just reply to this email. And it's always one of my favorite stories to tell, because all you hear about is how terrible America is these days. And yeah, I'm expecting like 50% refund, and it was less than 3%. And
nice.
The overwhelming response we got was like, we're just excited this happened here. This is the American dream, and like, we're excited it happened to you. So that was pretty cool.
That is, man. Yeah, that is really awesome.
Yeah, that had to be both exciting and incredibly scary and stressful all at once.
I call them tuition payments, right? Like, I made some big mistakes during that time period of like 2019 to 2020. So,
but then y'all were right there. I guess were y'all ramped up and ready whenever, of course, the whole 2020 thing hit and you couldn't find anything at the grocery store for, it was a pretty brief period there, but where everybody was trying to source, all sorts of things, but meat being one of them wherever they could.
Yeah, it was, essentially, I think we got those last orders shipped out in like beginning of November, and then we rolled straight into the Christmas season. And, we had probably about 50% of those customers come back and become repeat purchasers. But the best part we gained was the 60,000 person email list.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, like, we had scaled dramatically, before we were killing or harvesting, right? PC term, 4 a month or whatever. And, at this point we're doing 8, 9, 10. So we doubled. But I wanted to be, I realized that like, hey, I don't know how much of this consumer base is coming back to do. It might've been a novelty. So when the pandemic hit, it was like that all went out the window, and, we'd put 8 beef in stock on a Friday and we'd sell out in 15 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah.
So it was pretty crazy. And processing was the just like for everybody else, processing was just a freaking nightmare.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Has it maintained pretty well, or has been, I mean, did you see much of a change or fall off after things kind of normalized in the country?
I think where we went from like this just drastic exponential growth curve to almost dying. Um, Spring of 22, really when Russia invaded Ukraine, and I, inflation just went. I saw it the year before on all the business side stuff, like my boxes, my liners, my gel packs, my labor, all of that increased. But the ag stuff had stayed pretty consistent. And
Yeah.
then Russia invaded Ukraine, and as you guys well know, is like everything just lost its mind. And we were slow with raising prices, right? Which, like, I was pretty adamant, like, we're going to eat these costs for the sake of the consumer. And 2022, I didn't have a choice. It's like we got to do some drastic price increases, and it was right as customers were feeling it, because they're paying double at the gas pump, they're paying
Yep.
double at the grocery store, and so the first thing that went off of people's menu was a $20 pack of hot dogs. And so 22 until really the fall last year was just perpetually getting our ass kicked for things that were outside of our control. So that was pretty brutal.
Yeah. How did you figure out how to, man, we're in a ag recession. Like that's what they're saying now. And, Bobby Lee, like I said, he's in the cattleman side, and I'm a row crop guy. I farm full time row crop. And, dude, yeah, I took an absolute beating last year. By all accounts, it looks like we're probably going to take another beating this year. We're basically just rolling the dice, hoping
Yeah.
that it doesn't smoke us out. Uh, how did you survive? What is some methods or some way you found that y'all were able to hang in there?
Well, I would think you guys would agree with me here. I think one of the big issues, and this is something I became hyper aware of and that I've started to speak out on a lot, is there is no market within the ag space that's not at best run by an oligopoly, and at worst a duopoly or a monopoly.
Yep.
And so, we have this illusion of capitalism, but it's really not the case anymore in America, right? Because that's not unique to the ag industry. I can look around this room and I'm not going to be able to find a single thing that's not in the same, whatever that market sector is, whether it's iPhones or computers or, whatever it is, it's
Yep.
all the same. And, 24, I mean, we were real close to being belly up. And, I think that was, I tell people I've had 2 rock bottoms, and one was after burying a best friend. And I didn't do so good with that one, but I learned a lot of lessons that prevented me from making the same mistakes, because springtime last year was like my second rock bottom, where I was just like, oh shit, like, I don't think we're going to make it. And,
Yeah.
I sat there and I had the week from hell. I'm like paying back a bridge loan. I have no idea how I'm gonna make the next payment on Monday. We're sold out of inventory. I'm driving down my Ranger buddy's place in Austin to in our meat wagon, which is like a 12-hour drive. And I do scorecard items, right? It's like this system that we run for myself and all the employees, where I have like 4 to 8 really hard tasks that I try to complete every 3 months. To keep the business going in the right direction. And one of the items I had for that quarter was calling our top 100 customers. And at this point, I don't talk to our customers very often unless there's something drastic that we screwed up, which
Yeah.
just doesn't normally make me feel good about the company I'm running. But this was a cool opportunity, because I got to call all these customers that kept my doors open and just ask them the same 3 questions, which was, how did you find us? What do we do really well? And most importantly, what do we do really bad? And, that last question was the toughest one to get these people to answer, because when they answered number 2, it was, your beef's really good, Pat. But like, more so than that, I believe in what you guys stand for. It's, morality. It's traditional core values of like the family unit and faith and all these things that we used to hold near and dear to our hearts. And, I get to my Ranger buddy's place down there in Austin. He's a character in himself. So he's in Louisville, Texas, and I'm like, dude, you got 45 minutes. because I am cranky and it has been a week and I'm here at 11 p.m. And if you're not here in 45 minutes, I'm loading up this wet meat wagon and I'm freaking heading back to Kansas City. So, he shows up and, it's good to be around guys like that when you're in the spot, because it just reminds you when you're telling the old stories about how much worse things could be. And I think it was that drive back the next morning that I got pissed, man. I'm like, this is not the country that I'm not going to say that I fought for, even like there's so many people that have never been outside of the borders of this country. And maybe they've gone to Mexico, maybe they've gone to Europe, but they've never been to a third world country, or they've never been to a communist country, right? And they have no perspective on like what it looks like to have a truly bad day. And what a truly bad day is like people are dying. You don't have water. You don't have, you don't have your hierarchy of needs met.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, we're exporting all of our food production to countries that at best, feel mediocre about who we are as a people, and at worst hate us and would love to see us gone.
Yep.
And that was what led me down the path to creating Valor Provisions, which essentially is like, hey man, if you're not one of these 4 companies, I don't see you as a competitor, and let's figure out how we get your product to the end consumer if you're doing things the right way.
Yeah, dude, that's, you're hitting the nail on the head to us. I mean, 2 things. One, the big 4 is something we harp on big time. I mean, that's like we kind of got two core missions we've always kind of felt like with this show. One of them, we want to grow it to a level where we can actually try to rattle the cage of the big 4, and realize that's tough, because I mean they're huge. They have their hands and control over everything, and and the other one is on the row crop side, trying to help push back against these huge operations that's basically dominating that sector. And it's funny, man, you talking, there's so many parallels, like even with our show, man, we don't cull any shit, I mean, we say it how we say what we believe, we share our values, we're not afraid of that. We know at times that probably turns some people off, but it's also built a really, really strong base on this show. And, I think people do want that really bad today, especially, man. Like, we've had this kind of, this goofy, I won't say goofy is the word I'm going to use, with this goofy sort of mentality and beliefs that have been kind of pushed on us for so long. Dude, people are tired of it, man. So, I
don't know if you guys are like me, but for a long time, I walked the tightrope, man. And, my parents raised me if I didn't have anything nice to say, I didn't say anything at all. So it was like, and I think that I preach this a lot, man, but like, I'm going to tell this story just because I feel like it fits really well right here. But there's this guy from Hollywood that came out for some business, and, he spends the day with me. He's kind of getting a feel for who I am as a person. And, he makes it pretty clear right off the bat, like, hey, I really don't like Trump. And I'm like, that's cool, man. Like, I don't blame you. He said some crazy stuff, right? Like, and he spends the day with me, and as he's getting ready to head out the door, he's like, man, I really would have taken you as a hardcore Trumper. And I'm like, why would you say that? And he's like, well, you stand for the military, you stand for the American flag, you stand for the cowboy, like, you stand for all these like traditional American values. And I'm like, I kind of just smirked and looked at him, and this guy's like, I think he realized what he said. And I'm like, man, the American flag does not belong to a political party. It belongs to the American people. And if you associate that American flag with anything other than freedom, man, that is a slippery slope that is incredibly freaking dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I was just having this conversation yesterday with some guys that we've gotten to this place where you can't even talk to people that are on the other side of the aisle. Now it's like, if you don't agree, well, then you just hate them. And it's like, man, used to, you could have friends that you didn't agree with on everything. And nowadays it's like, the divide has gotten so big. Like I talk about the divide between farmers, ranchers, and the people, and that very much exists. I feel like it's widening. And then you got just this divide of, honestly, just amongst people that is like getting so wide.
It's I'm reading a fascinating book right now. It's These Truths by Jill Lepore. I feel like one of the things I didn't have. I love reading about history, but one thing I don't feel like I had a good understanding of was just civics. Like, okay, I've read the
Yeah.
Constitution multiple times throughout my life, but like, how does our government actually function? And it's a super interesting book because it doesn't tell it in like, oh, here's like a breakdown of civics. It tells it in like basically the main characters that had an impact on our Constitution, from Christopher Columbus to when he landed in North and South America to like modern day. And
Yeah.
one of the more fascinating parts is George Washington's farewell address is printed in there, and there's four main themes to it, and one of the biggest is beware of the divisiveness of political parties. And this is right as like the Jefferson Republicans and the freaking anti-federalists is like the two-party systems being created. And I'm like, man, that guy had a bit of the touch of the divine to be able to see where we'd be at 240 years later.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know, man. I always just say we're in a weird time. The farmers, ranchers, we make up like, I think it's 1.8 or 2% of the population of the country now. And, and I feel like we're getting attacked all the time. The farmer, I'm a row crop guy. Like I said, I get attacked for maybe my processes I use, chemicals, whatever. I get attacked. On the cattle side, y'all's damn cows won't stop farting, and it's burning up the environment. So, that's we get attacked, and I've had people that'll say stuff like, "Well, we got to get away from these damn chemicals," and I'm like, "Well, I know how we can get away from them," and they're like, "Well, what do we need to do?" And I'm like, "Well, we got to get back to where about the majority of people grow their own food. You have to reduce the demand for this bulk ag, and that's the only way.
Or you have to increase the profit incentive for the actual farmer or rancher. And I preach on that constantly. It's like, because people are like, why don't you do this to your cattle, or why don't you? They're talking stuff about row crop guys. I'm like, they don't do it because they're trying to put food on their family's table, man. Like, there has to be an incentive there to not spray. Another great book that you guys would probably both enjoy is called Barons, and it just talks a lot about like how we got here in the food industry.
Barons,
Barons. I'm drawing a blank on the author's name.
I'm gonna look it up.
But well, yeah. So I know you said started off. So y'all have breeding herd there, but then you're sourcing some of your cattle. So your father-in-law is raising some of those, and then getting some out of Texas.
Well, and with the Valor Provisions deal, I mean, this is the first year we're going through it, so like I don't have any data there, but probably 21 we can keep up with demand. We got 420 acres and roughly 200 animal units on the property, so about half of that is what we're feeding out, and at that point we're harvesting 250, 300 a year. And so like my ranger buddy at Austin was one of the ones we worked with a lot. And that was kind of the original idea for Valor, was like, man, there's a ton of other people out here that don't want to deal with the headache of, dealing with 10,000 customers and shipping perishable beef. And we got good at it by accident because, I didn't have enough cash to do both. So, why don't we start reaching out to some of these folks? Because there's so many, you guys mentioned a couple of them, but some people want organic, some people want bison, some people want Wagyu, some people just want a good commercial steak that's affordable. And so that's kind of the whole point of Valor, is like finding somebody in each of those categories that wants to scale, and bringing them on as a vendor. Tough parts to think through there, but overall, I mean, it couldn't have come at a better time because it is a tumultuous protein market.
Yeah. And so with the Valor Provisions, which of course I've looked at the website, that's going to be selling mainly in bulk, like buying halves.
No, so we have that up there, but we put that up, beef's kind of like the new Bitcoin, right? Right? It's just like the price point just going like this. And so we put that up there. And the reason we did that is because like our commercial Angus guys are out of Montana, and we weren't selling enough of their stuff to order a half or even a full truck. from Idaho Falls, which is where we process with them. So I'm like, man, how can we, the whole thing is like, how can I pay the rancher that I'm buying from a wage where, they can ensure there's something to make sure the future generation takes it over. And then nextly, it's like, okay, and I want to compete. When I started with, high-end grocery stores, now we're competing with Walmart just because of how we set up. Yeah. But then also we got to keep our doors open and make some money. So that was like the original 3 questions that we needed answers to before we moved forward with Valor. But we did the pre-orders on cow shares because we were trying to drive down the per pound shipping costs from Idaho down here. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like that special operations mentality. We're just always thinking through like how do we get more scrappy? How do we keep shaving down cost and passing that on to the consumer. So,
you got any Tennessee growers?
Man, not yet. Grass fed is like the one that people are just beating down our doors for, and it's tough to find folks that are doing that at any kind of scale. So,
yeah, that's what, man. We kind of laugh. I mean, I'm not we talk about the fat content, and it seems to be generally higher at times on grain finished.
Yeah.
And I like it. I mean, I like the I've had grass finished. I've had grain finished. I like grain finished. Yes,
the only reason I'm doing it is because they're a consumer. You can't change the consumer's mind. I've tried to tell them it's a terrible steak, but I'm like, you want me to find a terrible steak for you? I'll go do it. So,
well, that's what I was. We live out here in a pretty rural area. Love our local grocery store, but we don't have like a lot of that, fancy or
higher end
niche stuff.
You ain't gonna find a tomahawk steak at our grocery store.
Yeah, well, and you'll find a dang good ribeye, but you're not gonna find a grass finished ribeye. But no. I was in Memphis for a ball tournament the other day, and I was coming back home, and I was like, we're gonna grill out some steaks. So I stopped at one of those kind of high end grocery stores, and I was like, I'm gonna pick up some ribeyes. They had so much grass fed, and I was like, damn it. I was sorting through everything. Finally, I went over to the counter, and I was like, hey, I got every ribeye they had, which wasn't 4, that was just, grain finished. And I was like, oh, man, I guess just all these yuppies out here in East Memphis, they think that's the way to go.
Well, it's because of, I honestly blame a lot of it, and I listen to a lot of his shows. I like his episodes, but a lot of it is, I blame a lot on Joe Rogan.
Well, he's a big one, but it's just people have gotten in their mind, this is better.
Guys, man. It chaps my rear end because the only difference, right, is they're not feeding them freaking corn grain. Like, you can still feed them wheat sprouts. You can feed them corn silage. Like, and I try to educate. I'm like, hey, unless you're buying that steak and you see a pretty significant yellow tinge to the fat cap, like, you're probably paying a premium for something that's not a whole lot different than a grain-fed steak.
Yeah. Well, we like to be kind of snarky at times, and we're like, if you feed them corn to finish them, they're still grass-fed, grass-finished, because corn is a grass. So
we're feeding the grain, but it's come from a grass.
It's from a grass. We try to, but yeah, it's all marketing, man, and that's what I mean. I've got some buddies that grow organic crops, and they're like, we spray the shit out of these organic crops, and that's what I have friends on Instagram. They mean well. They've gotten really into the this Make America Healthy Again thing, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, but they will share all this stuff against, again, all of the chemicals we use on conventional crops. And they'll be like, you need to eat organic grown. And I told one of the girls that shared that, I said, I got friends that are organic farmers, and I'm like, they spray their shit more times than we do. And it's organically labeled herbicides, but they're spraying the shit out of that. And some of that stuff, if you drink it, is toxic as hell. Like copper sulfate? Like if you drink that, it'll kill the shit out of you.
It's just kind of crazy, man. I like a lot of the stuff he's saying, but the problem we're still not addressing is that, like, even on the tariff deal, I have to walk a tightrope every time I do an interview on that. But you're still not addressing the overall issue, which is like, we don't have a free market. across the United States. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how we found ourselves where we're at as a country. And I'm like, I do blame a solid proportion of it on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talk about, look, I mean, one of our problems is we actually grow too much grain. And yeah, I'm saying that as a grain farmer, but we grow too much grain. And if you ask grain guys, myself included, this year, what is your strategy to try to survive this bad market? It's to produce higher yields. And like we have to out yield the bad markets. But now all we're doing is confounding the issue of too much grain.
Flooding the market with even more supply.
Yeah. And so we're basically like, if we out yield the markets, we're kicking the ball down the road, because now next year where they're going to be like, well, now what the hell do we do with all this grain?
Well, and as soon as the crop reports start rolling in, that, oh man, it looks like we're going to have a record corn crop.
There goes our prices. Yep.
And I can feed cattle a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Which the cattle guys ain't doing too bad right now.
No, it's I don't know. I'm fighting because, well, we have people ask all the time, like Logan was saying, you know, I want to get into cattle. I'm like, probably wait 2 or 3 years. This thing usually, is very cyclical.
Yeah.
But I need to. We were preg checking some this morning, and I know I need to buy just a few because I've been selling all my heifers because hell, I can't turn down the money.
You want to buy a little? I got a little heifer. But
now I need to buy. But I'm looking at like some bred heifer sales, and I mean even bred, 5 to 7 year old cows. I'm like, my gosh, I'm not taking my own advice. Here I am sitting here, watching these auctions, tempted to bid, and real quickly they start them out and they just like, oh yeah, blew through, where my budget was.
We just had a bottle cap go for $1,200 at the sale barn local to us last week, and I'm like, dear Lord.
Oh yeah, I mean I was watching those, and they weren't registered, but they were commercial last weekend, and the low end, and these were pairs. $4,000. That was the low end. A pair.
Damn.
That's what I used to pay for a full-blood Wagyu fat. It's like,
what would like a full-size Wagyu heifer go for?
Oh, right now it's pretty rare that you're paying a premium for. I mean, the Wagyu market's falling apart. Yeah.
Really?
So here's my theory, right? Is Yellowstone, what was that, 22 or 21 that show came out?
Yeah.
And we went from being one of 4 that was shipping Wagyu online to every 100 millionaire, billionaire in the country was like, I want to be John Dutton. And they all chose Wagyu because they're like, man, this is like cool. These are like fancy cows. And it just completely screwed up the Wagyu market. So the premiums there have really kind of fallen apart. But it's a good time to jump into the Wagyu because their prices are competitive to what you're paying for commercial right now.
Well, there you go. There's for our listeners that are looking, which y'all
go flood the market more.
Yeah.
You're chasing that price down for me.
Yeah. But Patrick's like, nah, never mind. Actually the prices have skyrocketed on Wagyu cattle.
Because it's funny. It wasn't that long ago. People knew what Kobe beef was.
Yeah.
But nobody had really ever heard of a Wagyu. And then now that name, I mean, you don't even hear Kobe that much anymore. You just hear. People are very familiar when you go to a restaurant, and then how many of them have a Wagyu beef option. And, it's gotten to be became very trendy very quick, and then that market got flooded.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, man. And it's kind of crazy. I just I got back from North Carolina yesterday morning. We're deciding how much I want to say here. We're doing a collaboration with a big military influencer guy that lives down there, and he reached out and he's like, okay, I saw Valor Provisions, like this is really freaking cool. I just bought this 170 acre property in North Carolina. What can I do with it? And he sends me a picture, and he's only got like 50, 60 acres of like actual pasture ground. So I'm like, all right, what can we do here? Because I want to do something with this. And I'm like, because people find out I raise Wagyu, my next 2 questions are, how often do you drink beer with your cattle? And how often do you give them massages? And I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm not even offended anymore. I'm just like, how much money are you willing to pay me if I do those things? So I had this idea of like creating like a true Kobe style feed facility on somebody's property. And, we have some of the genetic lines we have here in the US and Australia, which we'll import to the United States. are better than what they have in Japan. So really the only
Yeah.
difference there is the husbandry. So I'm like, man, if I can start producing some really high end carcasses, I'm gonna do it. So it's kind of fun. I'm like, man, if people pay me to massage a cow, I will absolutely do that. So
Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, then you could he could get on, what was it, Land Trust? You could get on Land Trust,
yeah,
and you could actually charge people to come massage your cows.
yeah.
Uh,
The agritourism.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
now we're thinking.
I'm gonna start charging to brand people. That's what I told the guys, like, because we had Taylor from Land Trust on,
yeah.
and he was talking about, he was like, dude, people will pay to shovel shit, and I said, would they pay to? Because he said they'll pay to watch brandings, and I said, would they pay to be branded? And he was like, I don't know, and I'm like, I might do that
You better get some lawyers working on a good release form
for that one.
Yeah,
For
A
that,
real good one.
yeah.
Dude, so is it it's classified? You can't tell us who you're working with down there?
Uh,
You've piqued my interest, man.
former SEAL team guy that may or may not have been on a really big mission.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna say, man, North Carolina, my gears were turning. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's going to be a pretty cool deal. It'll come out later this year, and
Okay.
Awesome.
That was gonna be my next question.
Excited.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So that'll be your cattle. Are you gonna be running your cattle on there, or how are y'all
Well,
gonna do
it's
that?
kind of fun because I get to spend his money, which is nice because I don't have any left. So I've had this idea in my skunk works. And, we have this small little feed yard that will background for a while, but it's just, I mean, Missouri gets all the worst weather climates. We get these extremes during the winter, and then it's hotter than Hades, and 100% relative humidity outside during the summer. And so we really get our booties kicked on trying to feed during the summer and actually have the animals gain any weight.
Yeah.
So I've had this idea for that feed yard where I'm like, man, I think we just need to go through and kind of do something where it's like traditional what they do in Kobe, Japan. But I didn't have the money for it. So he approached me about this idea, and he's got these old chicken houses on his property. I'm like, and that's the expensive part, is like the concrete and the 4 walls. So I'm like,
Yep.
we can go through and retrofit one of these things to be something pretty cool. So
Yeah. So what? And so you said later this year. So you want to?
yeah, later this year, and he's coming out with a new book, and we'll be on the whole talking syndicate with all the big names out there, and he'll be talking about what he's doing with us as well, which is a pretty cool feeling. So
Man, yeah, the wonder is gonna just drive me crazy. Yeah, I'm gonna be dying to see who it is.
you hit stop record for a second, and I'll tell you. So
I'll make a note, and after we finish up,
But it's kind of back on the cattle. So are y'all on your Wagyu? Are y'all doing any crosses, or is it all just purebreds? Or
we had a lot of the purebreds on the property. I started out all full bloods. And that premium there, because like what at that point, the reason they're so dang expensive is you're paying a fortune for the full blood genetics. It's a small frame cow that you're feeding out to 1,700 pounds, right? And so at that point, it's taken 32, 34 months
dang, yeah,
to feed these things out. And nowadays, we're seeing some F1s come out really, really good at some of the operations that I stay in touch with. But on our property, we had purebreds that were like 96% Wagyu, and they're terrible maternal traits, right? They don't have any milk on them. They don't produce any colostrum. So, that they're kind of like sheep, man. Our ranch manager's like, these things will do anything they can to die. And I'm like, yeah, that's about right. So,
so are you having to bottle feed all these then?
we do colostrum replacer on all the calves, and that has helped substantially, especially during spring calving.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Horner's the big guy on Wagyu nutrition, and he advises basically treating it like a dairy if you're doing full blood. So you're pulling the calves and putting them in a calf crate and really controlling their inputs from as close to day one as you can. But man, that's a lot of labor, and we don't have that. So for us, we're still doing a really good job of paying attention to the nutrition. But we leave them with their moms. But you're getting all the downside of having really close to full blood animal with none of the upside of diversifying your income to be able to request the full blood premium if you end up selling some heifers or a bull or whatever. So
Yeah, I knew some people that are, they're just crossing them with Angus. They're getting high, carcass trait Angus heifers and breeding them on a Wagyu bull, and
if you do even like a 25% animal, I mean, you're going to grade out 85, 90% prime on your carcasses if you're feeding them
that's
right.
crazy. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to have Bobby Lee thinking about throwing some Wagyu in the mix.
Yeah.
I still remember, like, this would have been 2017, 2018 time period. And like one of my neighbors would come over that was letting me turn out a Wagyu bull. And, the vet comes out and measures the scrotal circumference. And everybody's like, I don't know about these freaking Wagyu bulls, man. I'm like, I promise, the meat will turn out good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Man, I've always thought it was neat. I'm a guy, I like to march to beat him on drum. And if everybody else is raising like this, I want to raise something different. And I mean, and we've talked on here a bunch, people around here raise black cattle because they bring the most money. I mean, that's just at the sale barn. But I just like different stuff. And that was kind of what first kind of drew Wagyu to my attention. And I guess, so you're feeding, or is your feed out, they're all grass-fed, everything grass-fed, grass-finished?
No, we hammer the grain on Wagyu.
Yeah. Gotcha. I'd say people ask a lot, what is like Bobby Lee has a certain feeding ration that he finishes them on. What does y'all's look like?
Well, we did feed them out from, essentially weaning to finish on the property. Last year, funny, a guy sold his business in the Kansas area, sees my story in the KC Business Journal about like how we wanted to be fully vertically integrated. He's like, I just came into a bunch of money from selling my company. I'm gonna go do this, and he's done literally. He told me this, so I'm not even throwing darts at him because I'm like, I think it's pretty cool that you even told me that. So the fact that somebody's willing to spend that kind of money on an idea I had, but he built out a state-of-the-art feed yard, 2 or 3. That are all tailored for feeding out Wagyu. And so we started sending our animals down there. Can't beat them, join them. And they're turning out really good. And they got a bunch of Vitelli's new, data collection systems in those feed yards. And I'm like, man, I'm jealous. Because those are really freaking cool. So, but we hammer the distiller grains, especially starting in 22 when corn went through the roof after Russia invaded Ukraine. And obviously that's come back down, but our relationships with the local breweries stuck around, and you can't beat free. And I know nutritionists sometimes throw some darts at that, but we've had pretty good success with it. So, yeah.
I know some guys around here that we got a few distilleries in Memphis, and some guys around here were feeding the grain to the cattle. Have you ever tried that?
I never have. No.
Bobby Lee's against alcohol, so he doesn't support that.
That's right.
He's not.
I was gonna say I won't say anything. Yeah. When a veteran tells me they don't drink, I always assume there's a reason for that, and I never pressure them. So.
Now, and we've got an ethanol plant not too far from us. A lot of people, but I mean, of course, that's not. There becomes such a demand for it. It's not. It is a good byproduct to feed, but it's not just necessarily real cheap anymore. So
man, I don't know. What's your best seller?
Yeah, it's still a freaking hot dog, man. Like per unit, not per revenue, but if we're sold out of the hot dogs, like sales stop. So
I was wondering. I just had a feeling. I'm like, it's got to be the hot dog still. I mean, and that's like an easy thing, steaks. There's a little more preparation. Like if you want a good steak, you got to kind of prepare it and all that. Hell, man, you can just get hot dogs. You just pull them out and chunk them on the grill. Anybody can cook them. Like
the microwave, you can do whatever. Just eat it straight out of the fridge.
I would trust I let my 7-year-old. I have 7-year-old twins. I would let them grill hot dogs. Now, if I bought an $80 steak, they ain't getting near that thing when I'm cooking it.
Well, it's kind of our business plan, man. We resemble like drug cartels. We get the kids addicted to hot dogs, and then the parents keep coming back. So
yeah. That's smart. That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Any other thing on the Wagyu? You got anything on that?
Man, yeah, it all just fascinates me. I sell all mine, just direct halves basically, and so I don't have to worry about getting rid of but the ground and the roast and all that. But man, I think that's incredible that y'all, because anybody who I've ever talked to, because Logan's talked about through his farm store, having USDA inspected meat, to sell individual cuts. All right, man, but the hard part is, yeah, you're going to sell the ribeyes. You're going to sell a hell out of the ribeyes, but what do you do with everything else? Because there's
Everything else.
not as many people want to buy a roast.
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
mean, they'll, if they want ground beef, they'll probably think, I'll just buy my ground beef at the grocery store,
Yep.
because it's a little cheaper. But to be able to you put that ground meat into a product that you created such a niche for there, that's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, we're always, I mean, our product R&D, that's a lot of it. Is like, what else can we do with trim? Because there's a lot of low hanging fruit of stuff you buy at the grocery store that's made out of trim products that, either A, doesn't taste very good, or B, there's probably some ingredients in there that most customers don't want to see on the back of their products. So it's like, that's the whole thing. We go to the, co-packer that already has a semi decent product, and we're like, hey, how would you feel about taking these 3 ingredients out and, kind of exploring that? And, like beef tallow right now, it's super hot, right? Like everybody wants beef tallow. All your suburbanites, my wife included, is like all about, their skincare routine with beef tallow.
We sell it. We sell it in my store.
Logan started making it. Yeah,
I do. Yeah, we got, because dude, the demand is crazy. We make
Yep.
lotion and candles, and like we're gonna just keep pushing into that because it's. Yeah, I mean, now I tell you, dude, it's a process to render it. Because I'm doing it. I was just doing it myself, and I was buying the fat, and I would have to trim out the meat. And then I've got 4 crock pots, and I would put the fat in the crock pots, cook it
Yep.
down. And, which my garage, I almost hated the smell. Like
It
and I
doesn't
love.
smell very good.
No, it doesn't. I love roast, and man, I'm a beef guy, but like God, the smell. And we actually went and ate some roast somewhere not long ago, and whenever I went to eat it, this was just, I don't know how they had cooked it, but it smelled just like the tallow. And we were invited, so I was gonna eat it. So I ate it. I powered through, but I told my wife when we got in the car, I was like, I struggled at first.
Well, and as you can imagine, my skin and hair routine's pretty minimal.
Yeah.
But I've gotten like super into doing like R&D with all this stuff. So I'm like, I have my wife stand there. I'm like, all right, I've got her shampoo, and I'm like, okay, so like, what on this do you care about? And I enjoy it, like the R&D side, man. I geek out like a scientist in there. Like, I've singed my eyebrows off a couple times when I mix the wrong chemicals or whatever. But that's the fun part. So
It is. That's how we are. I mean, what sucks is a bunch of people, I mean, I guess it doesn't suck, it's good, but they want unscented tallow. Like the lotion, we make a whipped tallow lotion, and they
it
all
smell
want
like a
unscented.
McDonald's cheeseburger walking down the street, man.
Yeah, I'm like, man, come on. Like, and we bought essential oils, and I kind of mix and match these oils, and I'm gonna try to make some like icy hot that's like natural, like with the some peppermint,
That's a cool
camphor.
one.
Yeah, that's what, because I'm all the time, joints aching, whatever. So I've wanted one that, and you got to put like menthol crystals in there and do that. But man, I made kind of this little batch, and it smells really good, and everybody smells it. And they're like, that smells good, but I just want the unscented. And I'm like, damn it! Like,
I know. I get it, man. People yelled at me for putting lavender in one of the test batches I did or
Yeah.
something. I'm like, wait, what's wrong with lavender? And they're like, if you're a dude, it lowers your testosterone. I'm like,
Lavender does?
I don't know. Apparently, that's what the internet says, and they always
Yeah.
tell you.
Shit,
It's-
everything
Lord.
does these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything does. I feel like. Well, what's next? What's next for you?
Well, we definitely put all our bags in the Valor Provisions basket, and that it's fun, man. I went from being stupid busy just trying to save the company to like growth problems again. And I'll tell you what, I'm never gonna complain about growth problems again. I remind my team about that regularly too. I'm like, hey guys, remember the alternative of what these problems could be.
Yeah.
But my ranch manager calls me John Travolta, the urban cowboy, because I'm glued to a computer from essentially when I get up till when I go to bed. And I always tell myself, I'm like, my end goal is like 3 to 5 years of this, and then I'm going to fire myself as the CEO and rehire myself as his ranch hand. And that's I do it because I want my kids to be raised in this type of lifestyle, right? And so I can do just about anything for them. So I just remind myself of that. And the days where I am about to throw this computer that I'm on through a freaking thing of drywall, I go outside and remind myself that the world's still a beautiful place. But it's scaling. I mean, it's scaling, and those are fun problems. We got some really cool stuff in the works this year. Told you about one of them. The other one involves the Hollywood guy that came out in the previous story. So, what we're talking about is starting to get noticed by people that care. So
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. How many kids you got?
I got 4, 2 boys, 2 girls, all young.
Nice. All
Kept up
young.
with calving season
We have a
for
good
few years.
workforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I tell my kids. I'm like, man, because I've had to hire a guy, and it's hard to find people to work for you on the farm. And I'm like, I just need my kids to get big enough so that they have to work for me.
Yep.
Yeah, they're my
Yep.
kids. Back in the day, what would people in the pioneers? They'd have like 12 kids, so they just had a whole
It's like,
workforce.
let's talk about how dangerous that was for their wives. You're like 50% of the women die at some point during childbirth, and they had knocked out 12
Yeah.
kids. I'm like, you guys have balls of steel. Like, you make us look like a bunch of sissies in modern days.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and then women, they had to be tough as nails, popping out all them kids. No, they didn't have epidurals back
Yeah,
then.
C-section. It's like,
Imagine by the time you get to
drink
like
this freaking piss.
8 or 10 of them, it probably comes out.
Just falling out
Yeah.
once they get to a few
Yeah.
of them there.
Yeah,
Like what do they say, like chunking a hot dog down a hallway there.
yeah, just
Chunking a hot dog. There you go. They might have
Yeah.
had one of your hot dogs chunking it down
Just
a
like
hallway,
a
man.
Stargate.
Yeah. Well, man, that's pretty awesome, and I've enjoyed it. I could talk to you about this stuff all the time. I mean, where do you? Last thing I guess I'd like to ask you before we kind of close is, where do you see the future of ag? I'm kind of curious, like all American agriculture. If you were to say, like, do you think it's moving in a good direction, a bad direction? Like, where do you see us headed?
Man, that's a loaded question right now. I think it's pretty interesting, right? We're the only species on planet Earth that held an exponential growth curve for as long as we did. You think about like bacteria, right? They had this exponential, but eventually you use up all the resources, and that declines exponentially as well. And I don't know if either of you guys have read any of Peter Zion's stuff, but he's got some pretty interesting philosophies on like birth rates and urbanization and what that's going to mean for the future. And I'm like, I think we peaked, right? And whether it's cataclysmic or a natural decline, I think we're about there. And it's kind of crazy as you see all this tariff stuff play out. If you read any of his books, he talks a lot about how globalization is going to end in the next 20 to 30 years. And we're fortunate here in the United States because we can produce damn near everything we need, but we don't have the infrastructure for it. Consumers, there's going to be a lot of pain points there in the interim, and I think a lot of that, the part people just haven't thought through is like, I take this from the guy at Little Belt, but he says food security is national security, right? And we don't know how to produce a lot of our own food anymore. And so that's going to be some pain points as we figure that out. But I do see the long-term impact being good for the ag market. The interim is going to be really, really painful. And that's kind of where my head's at. And, it's going to be painful for my company, right? Like, we can't come anywhere close to paying, or producing everything we need. So I have to pay at those prices. And when I'm asked that question, I'm like, man, it's going to be rough for my business, and maybe we don't make it. But at the end of the day, I think, we all got to get back to thinking about, I'm doing it for my kids, and I want my kids to be raised in a really good country. And that means more to me than making money, or holding on to a piece of ground. So that's where my head's at. And, if I have to deliver meat in a Mad Max van, fully kitted out, that's what I'm gonna do. So
There you go.
Yeah, yeah, man. That's. I think that there's been kind of an awakening, in a sense, in the country. Um, Several years ago, I guess now, I had another podcast for a little while, and I actually talked to a guy that he was a SEAL.
I
JP
don't I
Donnell.
don't think so.
I think he's buddies with the Little Belt cattle
Probably.
come that you mentioned. Um, but JP and I were talking, and I was telling him, typical dude. I was like, man, I wish I had been in the military. And I said, I went into farming. Like I just started farming pretty much straight out of high school for the most part, and he said, man, what you do is equally as important for the national security as being in the military. He said, because we have to be able to grow our own food here. He was like, if we rely on another country, and we already saw with like COVID, our medication prescriptions people take, all those come from like China, and our reliance on them, and that's a dangerous, dangerous place to be. So you're spot on, I think, with the nationals. Our food is a national defense, national security thing.
Yeah, all the things that people think are a problem in this country become pretty irrelevant when you can't feed yourself or your family. It's
Yeah.
pretty high up there for the things your body needs next to drinking water. So, yeah, I tell people all the time, I'm just like, guys, we all gotta wake up and get out of freaking this rabbit hole that we're in, and pick out whatever you feel passionate about and start trying to propel it in a direction that's better. And I think we're gonna get a little more Western before it does get better as a country, but that's okay. We've been down that path before, and I think it's important to remind ourselves of that. So.
Yeah, I might have to start selling cocaine here the way things are going, just to try to make
Hey,
ends
if it's
meet.
a free market, man, what the consumer wants is what you raise.
That's
So,
right. What is it? It's not Ricky Bobby. The other guys. Was it the other guys where he's a real friendly
yep.
cocaine dealer? Or that is Ricky Bobby.
No, it's
I
not
think you're right with
Talladega
the other
Nights.
guy.
Is it the other guys? He's like, hey, hey guys, you want to buy some
Yep.
cocaine? Like
Jump off the building,
looking
land
nice.
in the bush. That one.
Yes, aim
Yeah.
for the bushes. Aim for the bushes.
Oh gosh.
You want to pull him up? We got a segment we do here at the end of the show. We're very proud Americans on this show, and so we like to highlight a company or brand or product that's made in the USA at the end of every episode. Now we put our guests on the spot and we ask you for one. So I'm putting you on there, but first queuing up our.
We don't like to get too political, but yeah, we don't stray away from it. And our favorite president and his famous 2 words.
We start off with 2 words: made in America.
His famous 2 words, man, made in America. What is a brand, product, company that you would put your stamp of approval on that is made in USA?
You guys are probably like me. I carry a pistol a lot. I carry knives. I carry all kinds of stuff on my belt. And like the belts you buy at like Western stores right now, they fall. They're all made in China. Is that Mac Farms? Dang
Yep,
it!
Mac Belt right there.
Beat me to it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, this is
You can
great.
still
This is the
do it.
best
Yeah, that's
freaking
great.
belt I've ever had. And I'm like, man, like I could if I don't have my pistol on me, I could at least take somebody out with this belt. So
Yes, dude, I love these
freaking
belts.
amazing.
They are, yeah, Mac belts. Yeah, and it's got the good Made in USA stamp right there on it. Yeah, as soon as I saw you pull it out, I'm like, that's a Mac. Oh, dude, and these things are heavy, man. Like you could beat the shit out of somebody with this
I don't
belt.
know, and he
if you
does
had
those
to.
freaking hysterical videos where he's like hitting open watermelons and stuff. I'm like, man, that's genius. I was
Bust
like,
a
I'm totally
cinder
stealing
block
that.
in
I'm
half.
gonna like do a self-defense video at the tomahawk steak or something.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to. In your Ranger
In Ranger
panties, you need to
panties.
do one. Yeah. Dude, yeah, Macks Belts. Have you gotten one of these yet?
I hadn't, but y'all are hell. I'm gonna have to order one.
Yeah, no, you're the
They,
odd man out.
they're pricey,
Yeah.
man, but I probably was going through a belt a year, right? And they're $80, and I think this one was $200, and it's like if this lasts me 3 years, then I'm still money ahead.
Yep. What is do you remember what that
Man,
one's
I
called?
don't. It's the double stitched one, and it's got
Yep, just like that's how this one
It's
is.
got that.
I think this one was called the Gunslinger or something.
Mine. It's got the American. It was like a special drop he did with like the crazy looking belt buckle. I don't. It was like the. I don't think it was a Rancher. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of them, which I'm a sucker too. Like I said, mine's got the double stitching.
Yeah.
I love the double stitching, and oh man, it's a cool belt. Like I wear this to work in every day, and I wear it to church on Sunday. Like it looks good, like tucked in, and the more you wear it, like with it kind of the age, it looks cool.
Yeah, like I don't have any marks from like my holster on the front. Like normally I've already pulled all the stitching out, right, from like putting whatever on my belt, and I don't have anything on this one.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say my holster has not done anything on there. Yeah, they're great belts. Yeah, as soon as I saw you get it, I'm like, yep, I know what kind of belt that is.
Yep.
And dude, everybody, I bet you 98.9% of our listeners wear a belt every day. So, we kind of laugh. We're like, we don't even say anymore that the stuff is expensive. Like Made in USA stuff tends to be more expensive. But dude, you wear this every day.
Yeah, it's like better made. I mean,
it is. It is. It's kind of like my wife and I. We were talking about beds. We had to get a new bed one time, and we were like, dang, I really hate to spend this much money on a bed. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We only sleep on it every single night. Literally use it every day.
It's been a third of our life.
50% of your life in bed or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's how I'm like, I wear a belt every single day. I think I can shell out a little money on a belt that I'm going to wear every
100%.
day. So that's awesome, man. Hey, tell everybody where they can follow what you're doing and get some of that beef from you and them hot dogs. Tell them where they can go.
Yeah. Casey Cattle Company on, at Casey Cattle Company on all the, X and Instagram are the two we're most active on. If you want to see our more buttoned up meat prevalent stuff. And then if you want to get down for some of the rabbit holes we go down, that would more so be on the Valor Provisions side, where I'm less buttoned up. And we're most active on Instagram and our email list for that. I guess I am a little more buttoned up on Instagram, because if I say anything that doesn't toe the line, I get throttled. So.
Oh yeah, man. They love to shadow ban you on there. Yeah, I think that just comes with the territory on Instagram. Awesome, man. Well, dude, we appreciate you coming on the show, man. I hope you had a good time.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hang around with us real quick. We're going to close this out here. Guys, we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hope it's kind of inspired you to, think outside the box a little bit on the industry and how you would want to go about it. And we need you to leave us rating and review, 5 stars preferably on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Go to talkdirtpodcast.com. Contact page, and send us a message. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Any questions you got?
Yeah, go to agzaga.com. Still time to enter that giveaway. Enter there at the beginning, but do all the shopping, buy your stuff, including the bell net wrap, but everything else good you need. I was just using my Flexzilla water hose, which we don't have to talk about that. Logan will get tickled, but that discount code TalkDirt, all caps, all one word. Take 10% off, whatever you need.
Yep. All right, guys. Catch y'all next week.